your organization, hands down, is having a conversation about how can we put AI to work to make our employees' lives easier, our customers' lives better, to become more efficient, to drive more productivity in our organization. If you are interested, put your hand up. Lean into those sort of opportunities. Think about how you could use this technology to make your job easier, and then tell someone about it. Don't make your bosses go searching under the rug for the great stuff that you're doing. Put your hand up if you're interested would be the number one piece of advice that I would be giving to people at this particular moment.
We acknowledge the Gayamagal people, the traditional owners of the land on which we record this podcast. We pay respect to elders past, present, and emerging. The best career advice won't come from an AI prompt. It comes from the people who've lived it. Welcome to Tech Careers Hotline, brought to you by the Tech Council of Australia. I'm your host, Adair Robbins, and this is a podcast for anybody who's curious about a career in tech. We put real questions from real people to the leaders and builders of tomorrow. Let's begin. Just a quick note to say that we've built a new free resource on the Tech Council of Australia website. It's a guide for anyone who's curious about a career in tech. We'll put the link in the show notes. Go take a look. And now back to the show. Mel Silva went for a dream job and didn't get it. So she took the riskiest option on the table, packed up her family and moved to Singapore. That decision led her to where she is today, VP and Managing Director of Google Australia and New Zealand, and one of the most influential leaders in the industry. She's also one of the most optimistic voices about what AI means for your career. And in her view, there has never been a better time to work in tech. Today, we're going to talk about backing yourself before you feel ready, what to do with self-doubt, and why the best career moves you ever make might start with a no. This is Tech Careers Hotline. I'm Adair Robbins, and my guest today is Mel Silva. Mel, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Adair. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, we're so glad to have you. So let's go back to the beginning. What were you like as a kid, and when did you realise you had a knack for problem solving and maths?
I think that's a wonderful question to ask because I grew up in a small business family, right? So my mum and dad had a catering business. My dad had a full-time job, and, summer holidays and, well, all holidays actually were kind of always being involved in the business. And it was always, Mel, here is all of the triplicate dockets and invoices, like load them into our Lotus 123 spreadsheet and, do all these things. So I think my mum and dad always got me super involved. And I wouldn't say that I ever had this like love affair with maths, but I was always very business minded, and I was always very aware of, the dynamics of how technology can help make a business better. That was something in there from day one.
Let's talk about your career journey. So you weren't always in tech. You made the leap from banking. And for someone who might be listening and they're waiting till they feel ready, what would be your advice to them?
Well, my advice would be I don't think you ever are going to feel ready. And so it's just about putting yourself out there so that opportunities come to you, and then kind of being clear on what it is that you're trying to optimize for. That would be my number one piece of advice. Look, I think the other thing is if you are already quite deep into your career and you're looking to make a pivot, I think being realistic about how that move will look and feel is really, really important. And I talk about this a lot, but sometimes you do have to step across or down even to move into a new industry or to move into a new space. So, I think every opportunity, if it's going to give you momentum in terms of what you're trying to achieve, if that's a role in tech or a role in a really different industry, then look at it with a really open mind and think about the long term.
Amazing. Thank you. So let's talk about AI. Google is at the center of the AI revolution right now. How are you embracing AI at work and also in your home life?
Yeah. Well, look, I think in my work life, I am constantly amazed at how often I am now relying on these tools. And, some of the work is just, getting through some of the toil, like rewriting an email or documents. I think everybody's doing all of that stuff. Where I'm starting to see real value is when, in a job like mine, for example, I've got so many topics. The context switching is real, like every single day. And I think what I've started to do is create individual notebooks and AIs for each of those subject matters. And so when we have a meeting, I'll upload the notes. I'll use Gemini to take notes from the meeting. I'll make sure the AIs are put directly into my task lists. And it's just this, it's kind of like having a little chief of staff. And so when I'm going into a meeting, I can go into that notebook and I can catch up on where we are. So helping with context switching is a real life use case that I am really a big fan of at the moment. But the other one is in my personal life. I've got 3 kids. They go to 3 different schools, 16, 13 and 5. And for any working mum who has got, that influx of school newsletters and all of that kind of jazz, I've had 3 or 4 attempts at this and now I think I've actually nailed it. Like something that enables an agent that will read all those emails and send me a daily summary of the things that I need to do.
Oh my God, amazing. Love it.
I still haven't found a way to ingest the WhatsApp messages.
That's what we need.
This is the next frontier, but that's going to be in 2.0. But yeah, that's my number one lifesaver at the moment, the daily school digest of all the emails.
I love it. AI is something kind of new for everyone, and there's a lot of like self-learning and understanding. How do you approach that? How do you carve out time for that?
Again, really great question, because I think when you work in a company like Google, it can be expected that you know everything about everything. And the reality is we are all right at the beginning of this journey, and you do have to be very proactive in how you choose to learn about it. The way I kind of learn is by doing. So when Google launches a new tool, I get on the tools and I try and build something straight away so that I can see how it works in the real world. I do a lot of good coffee chats as well with people who I know that are really great at using the tools. I listen to a lot of podcasts about the sort of tech as well. So I think it's about finding the sort of learning style that works for you. For me, it's learning by doing, it's hearing and listening. I'm a bit of an auditory learner as well. And having those really in-depth conversations is a really vital part of it.
Thank you. All right. So this podcast is called Tech Careers Hotline, and we have a question from a listener.
Hi Mel, you have led one of the most technical companies in the entire world and you don't have an engineering background. So for all the women that are out there listening to this who don't have a technical background or an engineering background, what advice would you give them?
With the advent of AI, we're going to see a lot of tech-enabled businesses. I would hate to think that there are incredible female leaders out there who don't have a technical or a coding background who are opting themselves out of this, because we are really at the tipping point of a new time in business where AI is going to help make every single business a tech business. So you can't opt out now, ladies. That would be my advice. Find out what you are really good at, find out what you're super passionate about, and hone your leadership skills over the course of your career. And that puts you in just as good a spot as anyone else.
Let's talk about life at Google. So on any given day, you could be talking to a moonshot researcher, that's the long-term tech projects, or you could be talking to a small business owner in regional Australia. So would you be able to take us behind the scenes of one of your most surreal or unexpected days at work?
Yeah, I think it was probably during COVID. I think those days for me always hit as the most surreal, because on any given day, there would be days where I would have to have, a video conference with a government minister. And then I might do a podcast with David Koch on how small businesses are leading through COVID. And then I would have to jazz up my team and, dress up in crazy clothes and do a team town hall meeting. And then meanwhile, there's little people coming and asking me how to do long division. Those COVID days were really, really interesting for me. It was that clash of mum life, leader life, and, crisis manager life all coming down. And I was also pregnant at the time, which was funny.
Oh, wow.
And so, now I think that context switching, as I said to you before, is part of the gig for me. And it's about how do I use the tools to make sure that I can be better and better at it. But yes, you are definitely right that on any given day, you are flipping between lots of vast topic areas a day.
Amazing. So you've spent almost 2 decades in this industry, and I think a lot of people are considering careers in tech. So for you, why tech? What's the benefits of a career in tech that you don't find anywhere else?
I'll go back to what it was that initially made me kind of put my hand up and opt into this career. I was
Mm.
working in financial services and I could hear these whispers of teams and projects that were going on around the company around building a website, and it was just something that seemed so exciting to me. I was in my early 20s. I was working in a product kind of management role as an assistant product manager, and I just saw it as an opportunity to work on a really exciting project for the company. And I kept putting my hand up and volunteering my time. And this was all like above and beyond my job. This was not like, oh, hey, Mel, apply for this job and do it. I was literally just volunteering my time and doing stuff. And, when you kind of then fast forward through the next couple of years, you are one of a very small number of people in a marketplace who has got real life experience in building websites, which all of a sudden means you become like a lot more valuable on the job market. So, again, think about this moment. Think about this moment that we're in where your organization hands down is having a conversation about how can we put AI to work to make our
Mm.
employees' lives easier, our customers' lives better, to become more efficient, to drive more productivity in our organization. If you are interested, put your hand up, lean into those sort of opportunities. Think about how you could use this technology to make your job easier and then tell someone about it. Don't make your bosses go searching under the rug for the great stuff that you're doing. Put your hand up if you're interested, would be the number one piece of advice that I would be giving to people at this particular moment.
Great advice. And I know for a lot of people that kind of self promotion can be uncomfortable. What would be your advice to people who might not be so used to it or maybe more introverted?
It's a really, really great question. And it's one I have to talk about with Googlers all the time. And it's a simple reframe. I think the word self promotion makes 90% of people feel like ick. I think it's sort of very Aussie thing as well. I don't see this at all with
Mm.
colleagues in the US, but the Australian corporate culture is like, don't big note yourself, don't get a big head. And where that kind of often goes wrong is that it's based on the notion that my manager will see if I do a good job, right? And when I became a manager, it really made me aware of the fact that if I'm actually doing my job well, I don't see everything. And if you're doing your job well, I don't need to see everything. And it's
Mm.
very hard for me if I have a team of, even if it's 10 people, to know in eyelash detail all the great stuff that you're doing. So the reframe I suggest to people all the time is don't think about it as self promotion. Think about it as doing your manager a favor and
Mm.
showing them stuff that could make the whole team better. If you have done something that is really different and valuable and creating value for your organization, do not make me go searching under the rug to find it. Please tell me about it. Help save your boss's time. So that's the reframe, right?
I like
Um,
that one.
yeah, and it doesn't mean you go and say, like, "Hi, I got my own lunch today." That's, it's where have I helped create or add value to this team today? And that's a really, really helpful reframe.
Love that. Thank you. We're talking about careers in tech. What do you think are the benefits of working in tech that you wouldn't get in a lot of other industries?
Well, I actually feel like I can't answer this question, Adair, because I have been in the tech space now for a pretty long time. If you are the sort of person though who loves a fast pace, and look, let's face it, not everybody does, right? A fast pace does sometimes mean that there are, periods of time where you are working really intensely, right? Now, I think most of the time you can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but there are certain times in your life and there are certain sorts of personalities where they want to sit and think deeply about something. They don't like that fast pace. So, but if you really love that dynamism and pace, tech is a really great place to be. If you want to experiment and get your hands on the latest, greatest tools, we've got a great culture here of dog fooding and user testing here. And so I do feel like I enjoy that nature of that, which is like getting your hands on some tech and tools a little bit earlier. For me, particularly in the business context, I do love being an advocate and helping to problem solve with clients and partners. So when they are sharing what their vision is and what they're trying to achieve, working with a group of Googlers to help come up with what that solution might be for them. And that could be in an advertising realm, it could be in a cloud computing realm, it could be in any sort of area. And then bringing that tech to solve a real life business problem, that is really what the tech industry is all about every single day. It's a user problem when we're solving it with tech. It's a client problem when we're solving it with tech. So yeah, it's where the humans get together is where I kind of get my kicks from most of the time. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. Tech is the enabler to the problem.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great. We've got another question from our audience.
Hi, I'm Alex Barella. I'm in Year 11 at Griffith High. This is my question. How do you make difficult decisions in a fast-moving environment, especially when there's no right answer?
This is actually so pertinent right now when we think about AI and we think about where we're at just in this kind of inflection point of tech, because you won't know the right answer most of the time, right? Most of the time. I think there's a lot of leadership books that I read about, being a little bit more judicious and what decisions are really high stakes decisions. And if it's not a high stakes decision, then don't put too much effort onto it. And look, part of that is true. I think some decisions, if you can really look at it and say, look, what's really the cost of getting this wrong? And can we reverse it if we make the wrong call? That is a really good first test, I think. The reality is sometimes you do have to make really fast decisions and it is a high stakes decision. I think that's what's at the heart of this particular question. I personally find the ones that involve lots of people, lots of human beings being impacted by your decision are the toughest ones. And for me, I get a whiteboard out and I really get quite methodical about it. What is the cost of doing this way? What is the cost of doing it that way? And then you make a call, right? And making a call is often very hard. But I think the real magic in this part is you need to be able to communicate to people why you made that decision. And that's a personal value of mine. I've never wanted to be the sort of person that it's no and Mel said, and that's the reason why it's a no.
Yep.
I want to be the person that's team, I have said no, and here's what I thought about. These were the considerations from my point of view, and this is the decision that I've made. Let's go for it. Because it's so important what happens after the decision is actually the most important thing. Because I can make the decision. That's kind of, it's never easy, but it's the easy part, implementing the decision, and especially when it might be a bit unpopular, is the hard part. And I have learned that if you can really communicate the sort of the way that you made it, the considerations that you took when you were thinking through it, then people get behind you. And they might disagree, but they commit to getting it done on that basis. So yeah, it's the hard ones with people are the hardest ones.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for sharing. So, you've spoken in the past about self-doubt being one of your biggest career barriers. I think so many people listening would resonate with that, myself included. What was a moment that really tested you, and how did you find your way through it?
Look, it's actually very difficult for me to give you just one, to be honest. There have been many, many times as I've been tossing up new career options or, say, considering a job where I've let doubt kind of get in the way. What I've gotten better at over the years is just the awareness that that voice exists. And so, Mel 15 years ago would be thinking about something, the self-doubt would come in, and then I'd be like, well, that's obviously the right answer. So go with the doubt-fueled voice. I think what I've been working on over the last 15 years or so is to say that voice is always going to be there. That voice is part of who you are. Don't have to listen to it. you can just put it back of your mind, and know that that's there, and actually be grateful for that voice to be there, because sometimes that self-doubt is the thing that stops you from being really rash, or it stops you from being really arrogant, or it stops you from being like a bit of a clown, so now I'm grateful for it, and I listen to that little voice of self-doubt, but I'm much better at saying, well, and here's the 10 reasons why that's wrong. Or the one my coach always tells me to remind myself is what evidence do you have that what that voice is saying is actually true?
You're like, all the things I've been thinking about for hours.
Yeah.
That's my
Yes.
evidence.
And controversial statement, just because you think it doesn't mean it's true. So, I think becoming aware of that little voice is super important. I think what's happened though is, and maybe you only learn these as you do get a little bit older, is that you remember making decisions without it. So for me, it feels like during my early parts of my career, I was like, I don't know, I was very open. I was very opportunistic. I would jump to companies and new roles and take opportunities. And then when I got a little bit older and the stakes were a little bit higher, or you've got
Yeah.
kids and whatever, it's like, boy, like if I get this wrong, this is going to be, and they are, you shouldn't do that because you didn't like that one. It's funny. It's got this real sinister way of like getting back into your psyche a little bit. But, if it doesn't feel a little bit risky and a little bit like you don't have the answers to everything, sometimes they're the best opportunities to go after. Right? Like that's where you're going to learn the most. That's where you're going to grow the most. So yeah, keeping that little voice in check is super, super important as you're making those big career choices.
Yeah, but being grateful that it's there and showing
100%.
you
Yeah,
you're doing big things. If it's speaking to you, then you're probably in the right place.
exactly. Spot on.
Mel, was there any doors that closed on you in the past in terms of roles or opportunities that you're genuinely grateful for now?
Yeah, I'm always so grateful when I get asked this question, Adair, because it was about 10 years ago, actually. I was applying for the role that I have now. And
Oh,
in my
wow.
Yeah, I was applying thinking like that I was a shoo-in. Like I had done all the hard yards. I had been at Google for nearly 10 years. My boss was leaving. It was my time. And I didn't get that. I didn't get the job.
Mm.
So, I was stunned. I was super disappointed. I was really, really disappointed. But I am so glad in hindsight that that happened to me. Now, hindsight's 2020, right? Like I don't want to underplay the fact that in that moment I was like not happy Jan. I was
Mhm.
I was really disappointed. I was cross. I gave myself a couple of days to slam doors and have a vent and a sook.
Yeah.
But in that moment when the hiring manager spoke to me and he said, "Oh, look, it's not you this time, and here's the gaps and whatever," he immediately said, "So we need to think about what's next for you. And there's a couple of things bubbling up. One is really big and it sounds a bit crazy and it's a big stretch for you. The other one
Mhm.
I think you could do really easily, but both of them help you be better." And Adair, in that moment, I had a choice to choose comfort over discomfort. I had a choice to choose growth over being stagnant. I took the super risky option, the one that he
Mm.
told me was ahead of my skis, the one that he told me was the bigger risk, the team that wasn't formed and was kind of going through a lot of change. And I did it. I took the leap and I moved the whole family. This was not a job that was on my career plan ever, ever, right?
Well,
Um, but I did it. Like there is no question in my mind. Doing that job for 2.5 years made me so much better at the job that I have now. And so because of that, I'm really grateful for that no. I'm extremely grateful for that no in that moment now. It was a complete breakthrough moment in my career for me. And personally, it gave me that confidence again to take chances and to take some risks. And it also reminded me what learning feels like. Spoiler alert, learning feels deeply uncomfortable. And you feel like when you're a self doubt person, it feels like you're failing. But after about 6 or 9 months, you're sort of like, oh, yeah, okay, now I remember. It's just that I'd mastered the job that I was in before. I could do it so easily. It came so naturally. It was just instinctive to then be plonked into this. Oh my gosh, I have no idea what I'm doing. And I have to learn this and I have to be vulnerable and deep dive into certain topics and learn about them. And yeah, I'm so grateful for that no. Best no ever.
Mm. Oh, how did you feel going for the role? Like, now going for that role, going through that process
The
of
second
applying
time.
it. Yeah.
The second time. Well, look, I mean, I guess it's natural to think that maybe I was a bit dubious, but I wasn't. I felt super confident. And I think the thing was, I actually loved the job I was doing. So it was that even more enviable position of, I don't care if I don't get it
Mm.
because I actually really love what I'm doing and I am growing doing what I'm doing. So if it's another 3 or 4 years doing that, then I'm sweet. So the stakes were a lot lower. Let's put it this way.
Amazing. A lot of women who are listening to this will have had that moment where you walk into the space and you realize you're the only woman in the room. I'm sure you've been in that scenario many, many times. What gets you through that moment? What would you say to every woman who's wondering whether she truly belongs in this industry?
There have definitely been moments where I've walked into the room and I have clocked that I am the only woman in the room. I think I notice it a little bit more now because I hold a higher bar. Like I have higher expectations and I hold people to a higher standard. When I was younger and I would be walking into those meetings, I'm actually a little bit ashamed at how much I thought that was just the norm. One thing that I love when I talk to some of the like real up and coming leaders, how they just don't tolerate it, particularly in banking, Adair, back in those days. I mean, sometimes there's been like a bit of sport banter or not the most inclusive banter going on. And again, as you get sort of older, it's easier to speak up and out about those things. But look, what my advice to women who are in that particular situation is you've got every right to be there. If you are in the room, you earn the right to be in the room. So go for it. And there shouldn't be anything that you're doing differently because of the gender balance in a particular room. You're there to do your job.
Thank you. All right. So let's finish off with some career wisdom. So, Mel, what's the worst career advice you've ever been given and did you take it?
Look, I have been given a variety of advice over the years that I have chosen not to take. I've been told, a bit too passionate, tone it down, you need to be a little bit more serious. That one was quite common. I do think deeply about that sometimes because I then had this wonderful boss who he didn't say I was too passionate. He said, "You've got such a great fire in the belly." And I thought, isn't that like it's kind of saying the same thing?
Such a reframe.
But it hits really different, right? And fire in the belly to me was something that inspired me to move forward. The too passionate bit makes you kind of, it strikes at the core of your personality, I think. And, I have chosen to completely abandon that. Like I am all in, I'm very excitable and I like it when other people are revved up and we can have like a good conversation. I am very respectful of, introverts who might not be that way either. But yeah, I have chosen to kind of put that bit aside. I think that's become it's become the reason why I think you can unlock authenticity and the real sort of nature of things from people. When you are deeply passionate about things, that means you're deeply passionate about everything. You're deeply passionate about the product. You're deeply passionate about your customer's problem. You're deeply passionate about people and you're deeply passionate about the culture that you're trying to build or the crisis that you're trying to navigate through. That becomes a superpower if you harness it in the right way, and it's authentically who you are, right?
Mhm.
And there's
Yeah.
nothing worse than someone who's trying to be excited in that when they're not. If it's part of your authentic self, maybe try and understand how it's hitting and how it's landing for people. But yeah, the same thing can often be a compliment and some constructive feedback all at once. So just think about how it's serving you.
Amazing advice. Thank you. So if someone is listening right now and they're thinking, I want to get into tech, but I don't know how, what's the first thing you'd tell them to do?
Doing something is better than doing nothing. So either start learning, start searching, yeah, I'm sure if you tap into a LinkedIn network somewhere, you'll stumble across someone who who is in that space that will have a coffee with you. Talk about how that recruitment process works. Think about what your core skills are and how they might apply to a different industry or into the tech industry. Get it out of your head and into the real world. Talk to Gemini about how you might go about doing it. That has been something that I've seen a few people doing with different sorts of problems. Like, I'm trying to do this, I'm trying to navigate my career. Ask me the questions that you need to know the answer to make your answer better. And then you end up having like quite a good coaching conversation with the AI and some really, okay, give me some action points. Doing something's better than doing nothing all the time, and get it out of your mind and into the real world would be my advice.
I love that. You've hired so many people over the years. What do you think truly sets someone apart?
If I could give you the one word pithy answer for this, Adair, I would be like, I think, a multimillionaire recruiter. There's always something that is memorable about people in an interview, like especially when you do have quite a lot of applicants for a role. There's always the people who can answer the questions super, super well. It's the people who ask me really interesting questions and who deeply think about the curveballs that I like to throw into the mix. I made the terrible mistake of sharing one of my curveball questions in a media interview, and then everyone, I think, comes prepared now, so I can't ask that question anymore. So I'm keeping my curveballs to myself for death. But I do like to throw a bit of a rando question in, and seeing the way people deal with that is, I think, the breakthrough for me, because that defines working in the tech space for me. Is just when you think things are normal and steady state, boom, it's changing. That's what I'm buying, right? When I hire people to come and work in the team, it's the ability to go, right, new info, pivot, let's go. And so, yeah, as well as you can stimulate that and simulate that in a interview, they're the bits that stand out, the people who kind of just take it and run with it.
Love it. Okay, what about negotiating? What have you learned over time about getting the best outcome?
Again, I don't want to release all of my secret sauce, but no, look, I always see every negotiation as the coming together of two folks. And if the answer is not genuinely something that both parties will benefit from, it's a really short-term deal. And so, I think sometimes if you're trying to go in, or if people kind of approach me with something that you can tell is very self-oriented for them, there might be something in the short term that will happen, but it will prevent a long-term, deal being struck. So, number one is there's got to be areas that are, mutually valuable to everybody. And two, you've got to make sure that people around you want to work together to get things done. So again, it's humans at the end of the day that make most negotiations successful or unsuccessful. Yeah. Stakeholders, baby.
When you look ahead to the future, maybe the next 10 or 20 years, what do you think future Mel will be working on or thinking about?
Again, if I knew the answer to that, I would be probably sipping cocktails in the Maldives by now. Look, I hope that future Mel is still very human-centric, that the technology that's around her really helps optimize the time spent with the human elements of the world and the universe, right? Some of the most interesting companies that I see coming up and out now are not in that binary, oh, AI is going to do all of it or humans are going to do all of it. It's in that messy middle part where like AI is augmenting the way that humans can be in the world. Like, I think that is some of the like really interesting stuff that gets me excited. So hopefully working in that kind of a space, and in 20 years, hopefully a little bit, relaxing and retiring as well.
In the Maldives with the cocktails.
The cocktail, exactly.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Mel. I so appreciate you coming and sharing all of your wisdom with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Adair, and thanks everyone for the incredible questions. It was awesome.
Thank you. We hope you enjoyed that episode of Tech Careers Hotline today. And if you did, please help us out by subscribing, leaving us a review, or even share it with someone who you think might find value from it today. Until next time.